and the omnibus. So I was forced into the Archers when I was a child. And look, it's come back to bite me later on.
I'm awash with this stuff.
The Archers is the world's longest-running radio show, with more than 15,000 episodes broadcast. Despite being a rural flavour show, The Archers is recorded in the heart of...
Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to sort of sift through different sources and pull out the key bits of insight. And if you're someone who follows the goings-on in Ambridge, you'll know Sunday's episode of The Archers on BBC Radio 4. Well, it gave us a real slice of life. Today, our job is to dig a bit deeper than just the surface story. We want to explore what these, seemingly normal chats actually tell us about relationships, about growing as a person, and, well, the tricky parts of modern family life. It's amazing how much you can find in a good story, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It really is. And what's great here is seeing how these little moments, these snippets of conversation, they actually weave together to tell a much bigger story. We're kind of peeling back the layers, looking at the hints and the really important things people say that you might miss if you're just listening casually. Gives you a real window into, how people tick and how society works.
Okay, right. Let's get into it. Starting with Lillian. That scene at her mother's grave, it was so raw, so full of grief. And then bang, right in the middle of it, you get Kate's messages about a family holiday. That clash between the deeply personal and the totally everyday feels very real.
It does, doesn't it? And Lillian's moment there, it really shows something important. Often we grow the most, right, when our wish to help clashes with our own fear that we're not up to the job. You hear it when she says quite plainly, "I'm not ready for it." She's suddenly the eldest, the one left holding things together after her mom and Jenny are gone.
Yeah.
And she just feels completely unprepared.
Yeah, and what hits hard is how honest she is about her own past, Sending James off to boarding school, her drinking, admitting she was never a hands-on mom, but then in the same breath almost you hear how proud she is of Alice, of her strength. It's such a conflict inside her.
And that makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How do we square our past selves with who we are now? Lillian says it's nice being needed by Jenny's kids, Alice, Adam, Kate, Rory, Debbie. But then right away adds, it scares me to death to be relied upon. It's that classic push and pull, wanting to be valued, wanting to step up, but being terrified of the responsibility. A very human feeling when a new role kind of lands on you unexpectedly.
And Neil comes in with that simple, grounded advice. You do you. Which isn't just, comforting. It's actually pretty wise. It suggests that strength, especially when your role changes, isn't about perfectly copying someone else. It's about accepting yourself and using what you bring to the table.
Exactly. And it ties into this bigger idea that grief isn't just losing a person. It's also about how the whole family structure gets redefined. You're not just mourning the individual. You're mourning the part they played, the future you thought you had with them. And then you're left trying to figure out your own place in this new setup.
Mm-hmm. Right. And just as we're sort of processing Lillian's very deep thoughts, Ambridge life throws another curveball. George. Engaged. Talk about unexpected. An announcement coming from prison from both George and Amber. Lillian's just floored, and Emma's reaction that, oh no, it says it all, really.
Definitely. And this whole situation, it kind of forces us to think about how outside pressures, like being in prison and maybe what society expects, how that affects personal choices, personal commitments. For Lillian and Emma, the worry isn't just that they haven't met Amber. It's the whole weirdness of it all. An engagement from inside prison, no ring yet. It just really shines a light on how tough it is to keep family ties strong and understand new relationships when things are so public and unusual.
And Lillian's stuck, isn't she? She feels like she should burst their bubble because George and Amber are so excited. But how do you even do that without making things worse? So she comes up with this plan, this sort of delay tactic. Let's try and get them to agree to a very long engagement. Clever, maybe.
Well, Emma offers a different angle, which is important. She says, young love can be pretty powerful stuff. Wow. And that highlights a key tension, doesn't it? How intense feelings can sometimes make us, maybe blind to outside pressures. Especially when something private, like a proposal, happens at a very public place, like a prison visiting room. It makes you wonder, how much control do people really have when their big life moments are played out like that? And how do families walk that line between being supportive and being worried?
Yeah, tricky stuff. Okay, let's shift gears a little. Away from those big family dramas, the conversations also touched on, like quiet bravery in everyday life. Kenton, for example, identifying one of the guys from that horrible dog attack. He did it, went to the police station, even though he was really nervous. That's huge. It shows heroism isn't always flashy. Sometimes it's just doing what's right when it's scary.
Right. And that idea of quiet strength carries over into just, daily life. Kitten also brings up the whole phone thing, how people are always looking at their phones, even at the pub. Emma agrees. People staring into the palm of their hands. It's more than just screen time, isn't it? It's like our default way of being has shifted.
But then Emma's daughter, Kate, she pushes back with a very modern point, offending being on her phone, saying, essentially, if we don't reply straight away, people will take their business elsewhere. And that's where it gets complicated, right? Personal habits subtly become business demands. The line blurs between just chatting and, well, making sure you don't lose work. It forces you to think about what being present even means now.
Exactly. And speaking of positive influences, there's Joy. She started in the kitchen, apparently doing brilliantly. And interestingly, she was the one who gave Kenton some key advice that helped him do the right thing about the identification. So her arrival seems to be sparking good things in a couple of ways. Shows how new people can bring unexpected support and wisdom.
Yeah, it's those little links that make it all feel so real. And talking about connections, what about grandparenting? Lillian feels George is almost out of reach, and Emma says with Mongo it feels like he's moved on already, just between visits. That constant challenge of keeping a real connection going across distance, across time, especially with kids who change so fast.
It really underscores how those grandparent relationships evolve and the effort it takes, to keep that bridge strong. And it loops back to Neil's point from earlier about George, that difficult idea that sometimes you have to be cruel to be kind. Lillian really believes Neil saved that boy with those tough choices he made before.
Right, and there's this underlying hope, isn't there, that eventually George will get it. He'll understand that what they did, tough as it was actually the right thing for him in the long run. It speaks to that long game in families, that idea of tough love where understanding might not come straight away, but you hope for growth down the line.
Yeah, fundamentally, it's about accepting that the most loving thing to do is sometimes the hardest, and trusting that with time and maturity, the understanding will follow. It's a tough lesson in patience, really, in relationships.
Okay, and finally, let's touch on Joy again, and the village fete situation. She's clearly making a positive difference in the kitchen, which is great. But because of her new job, her volunteer shifts, she's had to bow out of helping with the fete this year. Which leaves Linda needing a trusty deputy.
And you immediately see Susan and Emma kind of backing away slowly. That reluctance to take on what sounds like a pretty demanding role with Linda is such a relatable moment, isn't it? Trying to juggle your own stuff, new job, other commitments with those community expectations. And let's be honest, maybe avoiding a particularly tough volunteer gig if you can. It just shows how even small village dynamics reflect those bigger pressures we all feel.
Absolutely. This whole deep dive, it really lays bare how our personal lives, our family stuff, it's all tangled up with community pressures, work demands, and just the challenges of communicating these days. You've got Lillian wrestling with grief and new roles, George's bombshell engagement, changing the definition of normal, and those quieter moments of everyday courage. It's all in there. It really highlights the complexities of who we are, how family support changes, and that constant juggling act between, our past and what's coming next.
It does. It shows that the really deep truths about being human, they're often not in the big dramatic speeches. They're in the messy, quiet, sometimes contradictory moments of just living day to day.
Makes you think, though. How do we handle those unexpected twists in the lives of people we care about? Whether it's a surprise engagement from prison or a big shift in family roles. How do we navigate that while staying true to our own path, our own growth? And realizing that sometimes, maybe the best way to support someone actually requires the most courage from us. Something to chew on, perhaps, until our next deep dive.
So, what are you doing now?
Just getting ready for the next episode. Just moving mics around.
So, what do you do?
I do the spot effects on the arches. Any
Are you what we call Foley then?
Kind of. Yep.
Okay. And these are all part of the paraphernalia of production.
Yep. That's the ball bar.
This one.
Yep. That's.
Haley so wanted to be in their own place when their baby came. It's due in 2 months. Not much chance of that now. No. I mean, it would have been a stretch for them financially, mind, but I just wish there was something practical I could do to help them, Caroline.
I think The Archers has had this immense popularity over the years.
basically because it has always very accurately reflected the reality of life and living in a rural community at whatever